Welcome back to the Not a Person podcast. This is me, not a person, talking about politics, religion, state, anarchism, anything else that interests me. This episode is going to be weird. It's going to be different. It's an introductory episode done after I've already recorded 5 episodes and put them out there. So anyone that's made it this far probably has a gist of what I believe and talk about, but I wanted to be more concrete and sort of nail some things down and, I don't know, introduce myself a bit and talk about who I am. Visually, right now the setup's kind of weird looking. I'm probably going to change this, but this is just temporary. I'm sort of tucked into a corner here. But if you're listening to audio, hopefully it's crisp, clean, decent enough audio, and we can just move along. So yeah, who am I? I'm just me. And this podcast is just me talk about government, rules, laws, state power, and generally how it's all just total bullshit. And contemplate how people crave control and power and ideas like that, like similar to that, dwelling on those topics. And I've always struggled to understand why people crave power, or why people almost crave to be ruled. I felt alone, I thought I was the only one who thought this way. I thought I was like strange or broken or weird for not wanting to be governed or controlled. I thought I was a bad person for daring to disobey laws that I found immoral or stupid or bothersome. I felt I was like a criminal for wanting to control my own life and my own property and my own thoughts in a way that I saw fit. I felt bad about myself for wanting to be left alone and not hurting anybody. I was isolated by just the mere idea of thinking of not being subject to state power. So that's sort of why I started this. It was just sort of a way to discuss these ideas, and I've always questioned authority and always been smacked back down for questioning authority. Like, how dare you question that, leadership, or why, or ask why, or say no, God forbid. My whole life I've pushed against power. Started with church. I questioned God and religion and the demands it made. Always wondering, if God was so powerful and loving, then why did he obsess over us bowing and worshiping him? To me, a powerful person does not crave followers and obedient slaves. If you're really powerful, it shouldn't matter what other people think or do. So why should some being who can't be bothered to show up control my life, even as a child? I knew it was absurd. Not even getting into like religious topics, and I don't want to dwell further on it. But like, the worst part about church was that it asked you to kneel. Like, I never understood that. Why do I have to be subservient? It was just, from day one, it was like obviously a sham, and all these older people just went along with it. And not only went along with it, they like were searching for more rules and more things and more guidance from some book and some higher power to have control over them. Whereas I thought the whole point of a good life, or like a happy life, was not having to listen to what people said or told you to do. That was always sort of my dream life. So then I could never understand why people like reached out to be controlled, when to me the solution was to be free. So yeah, you have people like inventing whole mythologies just to have some excuse to be governed. So I never really accepted that. I kind of rebelled against the church, and much to the disdain of my family, I fell out of that. It was hard to articulate why I felt so alone, because everybody else seemed willing to be governed and controlled, and I felt like the odd one out, daring to question the implicit authority of a fairy tale. And I'm not saying all religion is bad. I'm not like one of those militant atheist types. It's just not for me. I mean, like, I do have like some spiritual thing, strange cosmic worldview. Basically, it's like, I believe in this like quantum entanglement kind of thing, Big Bang thing, where we all started as one point, and we're all entangled and united, and we just haven't harmonized yet. But like that feeling of love when you meet someone that perfectly fits you, that's kind of the closest to like religion that I would say I have. But organized religion is, it's just subservience. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't mesh with me. Then I started questioning school and the authority teachers had over me. I was smart and I played along and I played the game, but I also knew that I was in charge. I would sneak out of class and wander the halls. I enjoyed reading, and I would hide in the library. Probably one of the reasons I never got into much trouble in school was that I enjoyed learning. I enjoyed learning my own way. I remember one history class in high school where the assignment was to make some art piece styled letter that was like sent home from a soldier on the front in World War I. But the marks were given for like how the letter looked, like aesthetically. Like it had to look like it came from the trenches, but like the content of the letter really didn't matter. But this was like a history class, and I was like, it's like an art project. This isn't history. You're asking me to do art. And I didn't sign up for an art class. I signed up for history. I want to learn. So I almost failed that class because I refused to do that project. I actually wrote an essay on the use of gas on the Western Front and how it was used, or how the use of gas on the Western Front ended up prolonging the war. And the teacher was furious. Like, my essay was well written. It was cited. It was like, I mean, a university level paper, I would say, in high school. And the teacher was pissed because I didn't follow the rules. So like, actually I had my parents come in, and my parents tried to like convince her that she was being ridiculous and that, you know, this is a university level class. It was designed to prep us for university. And here she had us making like arts and crafts. And I didn't want to make arts and crafts. I wanted to fucking learn. And she just couldn't accept it. She was so mad on the principle that I refused to play her little game, that I refused to fold, I refused to listen to her and follow the rules, that she was going to like tank my mark and like hold me back and somehow like treat me like I was stupid for not following the rules. But meanwhile, I had done these like above and beyond on the assignment. Like everyone else was kind of stupid. Fucking like, how do you learn history by like crumpling a letter and making it look like it came out of a trench? Like that's not history. Like it blew my mind. So I realized this lady was fucking out to lunch, so I fucking capitulated and I just made some bullshit art project letter, and she accepted it and gave me late marks because it was late technically, but I ended up passing a class and whatever, got into university. You know, it wasn't like it hung on that history mark, but it was just like a perfect example of where I would bump up against the idiocy of just blindly following rules. Like there was no logic to anything, and everyone was like, you just do it because I told you to do it. And I'm like, I think I was 17 at the time. I was like, fuck you. Like, I want to learn. I don't want to fucking, if I wanted to do, arts and crafts, I would have taken the art class upstairs. I'm here to learn history. So anyway, that was a huge eye opener for me, where it was like I was wrong for not following authority, even though authority was wrong. And the fact that I had to capitulate just to like get by was very upsetting, but also eye-opening because it made me realize that people are just fucked. People just want to be ruled. It's so weird. So then I ended up in university. Like I said, I enjoyed learning. And I actually enjoyed university. And I was excited to start. I still didn't really know what to think or really have a worldview formed when I was 18. So, like, I mean, who does? I was on the fringes of thought. I was always on the outside, though. Like, I wasn't, like, in the mainstream. I was always kind of experimenting outside of things, and I was being creative as an artist. Still am. Just like pushing boundaries and trying different things and not following rules and guidelines and all that shit. Yeah, and I got into university under the wire before like the crazy kind of cancel culture left woke thing happened. I was like the last graduating class. I think behind me was when all that shit started happening, where you had like people shutting down debates that they didn't agree with. Like, I never understood that. It's like the whole point of university is to debate topics, regardless of how much you don't agree with something. It's the reason you're having the debate. It's an opposing view. It just blew my mind when all that shit started playing out and people started getting like canceled and kicked off campuses, and talks were canceled because the views of the talk were so odious that the students couldn't, bear to have this person on campus. And it's like, think for your fucking self. You can go to a talk you don't agree with and maybe see their point of view, maybe change your mind, maybe learn something, maybe solidify your points even better. But shutting them down because you don't agree with them, that just never washed with me. But thankfully I kind of dodged that bullet. So I got my degree. I was encouraged by my professors and everyone, university, I was sort of that last little bit where free thought was sort of encouraged, and questioning authority and society norms, like all these things were encouraged when I was in university. And it's like it kind of went the other way once I got out. And after university, I sort of started to question the legitimacy of government power itself. The largest and sort of most violent of the three power structures that I had faced up to that point was the government. Religion didn't really have any power. School, same thing. But the government had, guns and bombs and police and military. And it's like, why is this acceptable, like, power structure? I never agreed to this. It was like I realized that I was being forced into following laws based on the rule of the majority, regardless of how I felt about the law. It was like I didn't really have freedom. I was being controlled by the mob. Like, democracy is mob rule. And it was in university I sort of realized that the whole system doesn't make sense. Like, I never consented to be governed. And just because a majority of people want something doesn't mean that I should have to follow that something, whatever that is. So, like, I really started to bump up against that out of university, but, young man, 20, and, I mean, part of it was tied to becoming an adult, and part of it was tied to, like, learning. But I, taking political theory courses and realizing I never agreed to a social contract, and it was all forced on me, and that I did enjoy the benefits of the state. It was not through choice. And people that say, like, oh, if you don't like the benefits, opt out. But there's no way to opt out, And I can't opt out now. It's like I can stop paying taxes, but they're going to come get me. So it's like, can't really opt out. But there were no other ways presented to me. I was kind of lost. I was like, I don't know what to do. This isn't, like, I felt alienated because in the words of Asada Shakur, no one is going to give you the education you need to overthrow them. So, like, no one is going to point you in the direction of anarchist thinkers or liberty thinkers or people that think of how to exist without power structures. Because the power structure isn't going to point you that way. It's education is designed to keep you within the power structure. But when I graduated, I was kind of driven. I've always wanted to make a difference. So I was driven by this idea of making a difference. So I wanted to join the military. I wanted to help people. I wanted to change the world. I wanted to get training and skills that I thought could help enhance freedom. Because I thought, it's not perfect, but at least our freedom's better than, no freedom. So might as well try to support it. Take the worst, take the best of the bad situation. So I thought the government, despite all the wrongs it had done, was not that bad. I live in Canada, so It's not like we had a Vietnam War and an Iraq War or like crazy government stuff. Our government's pretty benign. I mean, does a lot of shitty stuff. Don't get me wrong, but not as shitty as the U.S. government. But generally, it supports freedom. So I figured in the Army, I could suck up the rules and regulations. I had my university degree, so I'd be an officer. And I would be able to be that kind of officer that kind of listens to his men and makes decisions where they're needed and be generally a good leader. I was like some starry-eyed, optimistic 22-year-old. But I wanted to make the world, and I still do, but I wanted to make the world a better place. And I thought that the military was an avenue to that. I was misguided by propaganda and public education and complicit people and everything else, but that's how I got there. So, I tried to get in. I liked being outdoors. I liked all the other shit that the military had too, where it's like, you're a 22-year-old guy, fuck, want to shoot guns and blow shit up? Why not? But the Canadian military is a bit trickier to get into than the U.S. military. Anyone that's listening in the United States, Canadian military is kind of not actively recruiting because we're not really engaged in any foreign conflicts or anything. We don't have bases around the world like the U.S. does. Our military is significantly smaller. So recruiting in the military doesn't really... It's hard to get in. And I wanted to get in as an officer as well, which makes it even harder. So it took a bit of time. But after 2 years, and without getting into too much detail, I was actually found medically unfit to serve due to having sought treatment for an anxiety disorder that I had in the years prior. It was a minor thing that I got treatment for and got better and never was an issue again. It was just like stress and stuff, basically. And, but I disclosed it on my application that I had, gone to therapy, and that precluded me, made me ineligible for service, apparently. So that kind of fell through the cracks. And, I wanted to make a difference and I wanted to help my country, but my country didn't want me, So I fell, into working a dead-end job and some ups and downs. I slowly got my head screwed on right. Took my 20s. It took years. It took basically my 20s. But I think I finally found peace. I finally found a place where I belong, like a comfortable place. I've raged against a broken system without knowing where to turn. I was isolated. I felt like a crazy person. I felt that I had beliefs that nobody else shared. I spent years going through life and then trying to think through these beliefs and rationalize them and come to terms with these things that nobody else seemed to believe, and everyone seemed to think that I was a bad person for not wanting to be governed and not wanting to follow the path. I was stuck. I didn't want to become a wage slave. I didn't want a house with 2 kids and a car. I didn't want any of that. I wanted to be free. I would stop on my walks to work and I would stare at the snow-covered trees and I would just crave the wild and the outdoors. And found myself. Slowly. But I did find myself. Through trial and error and starts and stops. And I finally landed here. Where I am now. I found this path alone. Feeling alienated. Not realizing I was walking the same path that thousands of people have walked before me. Thousands of anarchists. I was not alone in wanting to be free, but I felt it because they don't really connect you with the system isn't designed to kick you out of the system. So people that balk against the system, there's no way out, So you kind of end up in this thought circle and feel like you're going insane. And it took a while, but I finally landed where I am. And that I realized that there's others out there like me. People who crave liberty and freedom and who don't want to be tricked into thinking that the word liberty means bowing to a flag and embracing state power, but it means to be liberated from the binds that we're wrapped in from birth. The Latin root of the word, liberty, libra, it means free. So if you're here, if you're like me, welcome. You're not alone. There's others out there like us. We just struggle to find platforms and voices because the state and power structures hate the ungovernable. Not only them, but other people too. Not everyone wants to be in this state of absolute freedom. Not everyone craves this kind of liberty. People will shun you. People will think you are crazy. People will think you're some kind of extremist for daring to be asked to be left alone. And people want to be governed. People seek rulers. People crave to be told what to do. People love to impose rules over others and love to have the backing of Big Daddy government to give them a little power trip. Just go to a park playground and watch. People self-govern by referring to the rules and the bylaws. I walk my dog in this park, and one half of the park is unofficially off leash and the other half is sort of on leash. So the section of the park with the unofficial off leash, most of us are all pretty cool and let our dogs off leash, but occasionally people will come there and start making comments about the dogs being off leash and how it's against the rules. It's like people crave a boot on their neck. It's like they go out of their way to impose the rules on others. Or the rabid ways that people defend police or other agents of the state. I can't understand how people are so desperately in need of, or desperately want to be told what to do. I have a hard time, I have a hard time at work even, where my boss gets too demanding and I have to rein it in and I have to remind myself that they're paying me. But my initial reaction to being told to do something is to ask why. And that's me getting paid. Meanwhile, you have people literally paying others to tell them what to do. People crave it. It's bizarre. People just love to smile and vote a new leader and clap mindlessly as they follow along with the new rules, then act all shocked when the rules overstep into their comfortable little bubble, but they still live by that mantra that rules are rules. And taking an extreme view of the state. So bear with me here. But everyone looks at the Holocaust and sees themselves as some kind of liberator. Everyone imagines that if they were in the same shoes as some German citizen, that they would have protected their neighbors and fought against the Nazis. They tell themselves they would never do that, never just blindly follow orders. But most would. Most people would. There have been experiments that show this. People crave leadership. People love to be told what to do, and people love to have the ability to blame their actions on the power of the state. If you called the cops on your neighbors for having too many people over during the COVID lockdown, or you've told someone to put on a mask, or you've supported vaccine passports, I mean, I hate to break it to you, but you probably would have been sending your Jewish friends to the camps in Germany. It sounds extreme, but it really isn't. You would have told yourself you're just following the law, and you would have reported them. You didn't kill them, you were just being good, doing like you were told by the state. The Germans were smart. They didn't shoot your Jewish neighbor in the street. They took them off to a nice place to be re-educated. You thought you were doing the right thing. You were just following the law. But rules are rules after all, you know? I just can't understand how people fail to mind their own goddamn business and question authority, and how everyone craves this kind of thing. We're not that removed from this thing from Holocaust happening again. It's the same as someone calling their neighbor or calling the cops on their neighbor for drugs. Like if you have called the cops on somebody for doing drugs, to be locked up for a harmless thing, then you 100% would have turned your Jewish neighbors into the Germans. You're a Nazi. Like, literally. If you've ever reported anyone to the police for a non-violent crime, you're basically a Nazi. And if you're like that, you disgust me. Like, I don't know what to say. I can't respect you as a person. I can't respect someone who craves power to such a degree that they're willing to enact state violence against another person. It's abhorrent. Why can't you just keep to yourself, and if no one is hurting you or your property, just live your life? I can go on and on and on about how everything the state has done, and how it's all been legal in the eyes of the state, how tax is theft, how the government is not your friend, how they don't care about you, but they care about keeping themselves in power. They don't care about you. It's about keeping themselves in power. I did not consent to be governed. I therefore refuse to be governed. I live my life, though. I got to. I live it in a way that keeps me comfortable. It's like being in school. I just play the game. It's like that teacher. I capitulate. I follow the rules. I blend in. I'm like a sleeper agent living in enemy territory. I practice agorist behaviors wherever I can. I basically try to live free inside the state, live parallel to it. I have this ideal vision of a society where people live and let live. I mean, there's a lot there. But if you're here, we can sort of work through that together. And if you're here feeling lost and confused, stateless in a state society, fear no more. There are others like you, like me. People who value freedom, people who value consent, and people who value voluntary action over tyranny, violence, and coercion. You are not alone. Welcome to this mess. Yeah, it's funny doing an introductory episode 6 episodes in, but that's it. My brain, it's not wired right, and you're gonna realize that if you stick around. But that's about it. That's all I got to say. That's who I am. I am not a person. I am just me, and I hope to see you around. And if you're lost and alone and don't know what to do or what to think and feel like you're the only one who has these thoughts, just know that you're not. Stay free.